I've got some good news and some bad news. You want the bad news first? Okay. Brenda, I'm sorry, Brenda, you got to go with the majority on this one. The bad news is that being a covenantal faith, as opposed to a creedal faith, takes a lot of work, right? We are bound together not by a creed we all believe. We are bound together by agreeing to be a certain way together, by agreeing to do certain things together, and by being in good relationship with one another. Takes a fair amount of work. The good news is that we can do this work. Okay, that wasn't good enough news. And that this hard work of being in real relationship with one another through the good and the bad and the ugly and the hard, these are the very skills that are needed to build the type of relationships that we need right now to change our world and ensure that all people are safe and all people have access to what we need to survive and to thrive. That's some better news? Okay. So, today, we're going to do something a little bit different in the sermon. We're going to hear a short collection of words and wisdoms from some other people, not just me, because we all get sick of hearing me talk all the time. And we're going to build, through the words of others, a web of relationship, connection, and guidance for navigating this relational world we live in. These readings come from different people we're in relationship with in different ways, and they speak different messages to us on the theme of promises. The fact that we are a people who make and break and remake promise. My hope is that some of these words speak to you specifically where you are in your life, and that all together they'll form a weave, a web to guide us in promise and covenant, providing a string to follow when we feel lost or when we break and need to remake the promises that we make in our lives. Now, our first silk fiber, they're silk, right? The little webs that spiders make, that's silk. Okay, the first silk fiber strand on the web is from Frances Coziar, an active Canadian UU young adult living in Kingston, Ontario. Her words have made it into our service before in chalice lightings and extinguishing. She's a young disabled retiree, a social justice advocate, and a published author. She writes, "When covenant breaks, we need to come home to trust that there are others out there who would have supported you if they were only there, and to trust that our faith will always be here tomorrow, bound by nothing more or less than the promises made by people willing to fight like a golden web, glimmering with dew in the first light of morning. Because when covenant breaks, it is a tear, merely, in a web, still holding strong and as long as we believe in ourselves and in the greatness that we could become together, then we can always come back tomorrow, roll up our sleeves, and start weaving again." Frances's gorgeous and powerful poem, gosh, the web glimmering golden in the morning, is beautiful and reminds us that even when we break a promise in a relationship and we feel like our whole world might have crumbled, the web is still there. There is only a tear, and we can always roll up our sleeves and do more work tomorrow. Now, her poem was also a whole lot longer than you all heard. I have to do some editing. And it is important for me to note that it begins with her own reflections on when she felt this faith of ours and of hers slammed its door in her face, and was about her choosing to stay in it anyways. Her own coming to a commitment of covenant and promise with her chosen religious community. I want to celebrate that, and the pain I felt when I was reading her words calls me to give us a little bit of a reminder, a PSA of sorts, that there are some relationships that are not worth returning to, right? And there are some that are not worth rolling up our sleeves for. We all deserve to be respected, listened to, and loved in relationships, whether this relationship is with a friend or a partner, a religious community, or a social group. And I want to be clear in saying from the pulpit on a day when we're about to talk a whole lot about promise and making and breaking promises, that abuse, whether emotional, spiritual, or physical, is not acceptable, and that none of us deserve this treatment. When we are talking about making and breaking promises being a normal part of being human, we are not making excuses for or normalizing those who continually break promises, all right? Or consistently do not respect their relationships. We are saying that our promises and our covenant call us to do better than this. And we also want to let you know, because we're an organization that does care, right? We're a community that cares for one another, that if you're in a relationship of any kind where you are not a respected part of that relationship, we hope and we do pray that you might find a safe way to leave and find relationships that do honor the worth you have, that love you as you deserve to be loved. And if you or someone you know is in need of resources for intimate partner or domestic violence, we have an additional sheet you received in your order of service that has local and national resources on it. Know, I'll say it once more, that when we are talking about making and breaking and remaking promises, we are not talking about perpetual not keeping promises, right? We are called to be a people who recognize that there are power dynamics in all relationships, right? And it is our hope and prayer and calling to be aware of these power dynamics. And so one prayer I have for us today is that we may use our power for love, beauty, and justice whenever we have it. And when we do wrong, we commit to coming back and repairing and getting back into good relationship. For when we come back in this way, we come back humbled and in touch with our humanity. And it is there where change can happen within our very selves, right? Other people have felt this when we make a mistake and we feel awful about it. We're getting in touch with some humility and with some reality of our own humanity. And when we can be in that place and meet others in that place, invite others to be vulnerable together, that is where the real magic happens. Our next silken spun strand on our web of relational wisdom is from Liz James of the UU Hysterical Society. She is a leader in our faith whom some among you follow devoutly. And she wrote a charge to those becoming members of their UU community. And as you hear it, you might be thinking about this UU community, or it might bring to mind perhaps a relationship you have in another community, or perhaps our country and democracy. I'll leave your interpretation up to you. She writes, "There will come a time when we are not a community of excitement and possibility that is your true home. There will come a moment when you do not fit and we disappoint you. Memorize the feelings you have in this moment of joining and celebration, because you will need them months from now or years from now. You will need them in the broken-hearted moment to come, when you realize that we together are not all that you thought we were. You will not fit. If every one of us fit, we would not be called to grow. This religion is not a thing you join, it is a thing you are called to co-create. So prepare now for when we break one another's hearts, knowing what will carry you through that, and know who will carry you through that. Be ready. Hold on to this moment and this memory for that time in the future when you are ready to turn away. Your moment of remembership will be one of the most precious parts of your journey as a Unitarian Universalist. Today, plant the seeds in your heart that will prepare you for it. In a little bit, we'll hear from Kimberly, and she'll sing, I think, one of the most popular wedding songs of Ave Maria. A representation of these ritual moments of making a relationship official. A wedding, a membership ceremony and celebration at this fellowship. And today, I invite us to remember the moments of promise in our relationships. The walking down the aisle or into the room of the animal shelter where you met your life partner who happens to have 4 legs and meows. Or when you drove down the interstate to pick up your dog from someone in a different state in the Walmart parking lot. And perhaps some aisle moments are more gradual. That call that turned an acquaintance into a friend because you or they were brave enough to pick up the phone or text, "It's been a rough day. Can I drop by your front porch?" May we take a moment now to return to these moments, whether big aisle moments of ritual or little phone calls, asks for help. These times when we entered into a covenant and made a promise, and the essence of our relationship changed. Call to mind just some of them briefly. May we ground ourselves in the feeling of these moments, the joy and the hope, as well as the essence of the promises that we made, for we will need them in trying times. Our final wisdom web is from Reverend Dr. Kendall Givens, who is a formidable minister of our faith in Missouri. And she's also one of the most respected ministers for her mentoring and supervising so many ministers in formation. There are generations of people who have come into ministry under her tutelage. And she writes, "Our communities of memory and promise are founded upon covenants because we all need a defense against the impulse of immediate feelings that challenge our best intentions. It is necessary to be reminded of what you said you were going to do and what you really want, over and above the lure of momentary comfort. Covenant is our word for the solemn promises that counteract the randomness of a future in which anything and everything is possible by committing us in advance to certain relationships and values. We do this because what we build with intention and even with difficulty is more satisfying in the long run than the pleasures that we happen to encounter. We do it in time-consuming rituals invoking powers that we scarcely know how to name, because we are seeking some way to give our lives the density and dignity and depth that we suspect with longing might yet be possible. Covenant, this is me talking now, the promises we make in times of ritual or in less picture-worthy aisle moments are to people, and they're also to values. They form a web, one that catches us when we're falling and that keeps us in line when we're needing that. Anyone else sometimes needing a little web to keep you in line? All right. It's okay, you don't have to out yourselves here. Reverend Gibbons reminds us that what we build with intention and difficulty is more satisfying in the long run than pleasure or comfort. Now, I think there's a word here for our current moment about how actions of fleeting activism might feel good or comforting, but might not always be the most impactful in the long run. So I'm gonna share with us a thing I learned from the Industrial Areas Foundation, the community organizing interfaith organization that we're a part of. They taught me that there is a difference between organizing and activism. Activism is immediate, issue-based, it's in the moment. It's oftentimes a quick call to action. It can be vocal and out in front of folks. Organizing is about building relationship and trust and power for the long haul. There might be moments of activism within organizing, but the base is about building these relationships of deep trust so we can face hard, seemingly insurmountable realities together. Now, I don't know if y'all know this, but there's a whole lot of people and beings on our earth that are in need of some assistance right now, right? And we will only get there, long haul game, if we do the slow, grueling, heart-taxing work of building real relationship, trust, and power. Now, this is a little bit like less exciting and sexy, right? It's not like flashy and immediate. There's no quick checklists. But the other thing about organizing that's hard is because it's a scary jump into trust and relationships. It's scary because we know too that just as we mess up in relationships here within our fellowship, we'll mess up in our wider community. I'm here to tell you that we will, and also that it's okay. Because what our faith teaches and reminds us and constantly invites us back into is the promise of our covenant and being in relationship. It reminds us that we are blessedly imperfect people who will mess up, we're human, and that in that messing up there can be, if we live into it, a moment of transformational humility. When we understand ourselves as human, imperfect beings who mess up, and we can go to another person with an apology, perhaps, a real moment of vulnerability. And in that moment, we can build the bonds of trust, of connection, of true human connection that is able to weather the difficulty of interpersonal relationship and the difficulty that the world will be bringing us. This is the process with which we strengthen, build more fibers of these webs, these strands of the web that connect us with all. Our world is in need of healing and beauty and justice, and so are we. My prayer, my hope for all of us is that we may be the carriers of this healing, beauty, and justice, that we can pick them up whenever they drop through our human, fallible, fragile, and also truly fabulous fingers. We have fingers and a thumb. It's pretty great. and that we keep forming ourselves and our world with these gloriously imperfect tools of body, mind, heart, and soul. Can we be these people to commit to reshaping our world in these small and humble ways? Amen. All right. Amen. May it be so, and may we make it so.